Welcome to Haunted Talks, the official podcast of the Haunted Walk, offering ghost tours and paranormal adventures in Kingston, Ottawa, and Toronto, Ontario. My name is Jim Dean. I am the creative director, and we really appreciate you joining us for today's episode. Quoth the Raven Nevermore is one of the most well-known lines of poetry ever written. Edgar Allan Poe's atmospheric gothic masterpiece still gives chills and captures our imagination today. The narrator of this paranormal poetry is tormented by an ominous talking bird and is haunted by the ghost of his lost love, Lenore, more than enough to drive any of us to the edge of sanity. In the episode, we will explore this horror classic and share a reading of this iconic, spooky poem. But before we get to that, our in-person ghost tours in Kingston, Ottawa, and Toronto are getting very close to being completely sold out before the end of October. So, if you're looking to join us, I would suggest trying to get your tickets as soon as possible. The good news is that we've also extended our season much further into November this year, as our capacity is so small right now. So, if you do find that tickets are sold out, take a look in November, as in each city we will be offering additional experiences for you to come and do in person. While our in-person events are close to sold out, and of course many of you listen outside of our geographical area, we do have two incredible online Halloween experiences for you to enjoy. The first is The Haunting at Home, which we have discussed on previous episodes of the show. It is an online interactive audio experience where your host, myself, will challenge you to complete 6 paranormal experiments in your own home, in the dark, of course. So if you enjoyed playing Bloody Mary as a child, or perhaps experimenting with a Ouija board, or even have an interest in learning about ghost hunting, The Haunting at Home would be a perfect activity for you on a dark October night. The experience takes around 2 hours to complete and can be done any time of day or night of your choosing. For group sizes, we recommend 2 to 8 people. We've even had some people do it by themselves, and other groups do it over Zoom. So there's lots of different ways to adapt it to the needs of you and your favorite spooky people. The results have continued to come in from across North America, and so far with 120 different experiments being conducted, 75% of groups are reporting spooky activity, with 10% of those groups having to open our safety hatch as they got a little too frightened about the experience. The Haunting at Home is $34.99 Canadian. If you live in the US, you'll get a little bit of a discount. And of course, as Haunted Talks listeners, I'd love to extend to you a discount of 20% off The Haunting at Home. You can simply use the promo code Haunted Talks, the name of the show, Haunted Talks, all one word, at checkout to take advantage of that opportunity. I can't wait to see more of your results coming in. Another fun online Halloween experience we are offering are our virtual haunted campfires. Now, we've already had our first 2 and had over 400 people attend. And we have 2 coming up on October 27th on the topic of battlefield ghosts. October 29th, we have Canada from Ghost to Ghost. And we're looking to add a surprise show on Sunday, November 1st. Tickets to these are $10 per household, and it's a great night of ghost storytelling and having a little spooky fun around the Halloween season. Information about our tickets, The Haunting at Home, or our virtual haunted campfires can all be found on our website, which is hauntedwalk.com. Please be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all 3 at Haunted Walk. And if you haven't done so already, please be sure to rate and subscribe the show wherever you listen to us. A nice little treat to give us around Halloween. The poem begins after midnight on a cold December evening. The narrator sits alone by the fire, dozing as he reads a book of ghost stories, hoping to distract his mind from thoughts of Lenore, his lost love. He suddenly hears a knocking at his door. He gets up to answer, only to open the door and find absolutely nothing or no one there. With it being after midnight, he starts to grow frightened and tries to tell himself that it's just the wind hitting the window. When he goes to the window to try to remedy the problem, a raven suddenly swoops in. Unlike a normal bird that would probably fly around the room scared, the raven calmly perches itself on a statue of Pallas, the Greek goddess of wisdom, above the door. Amused by the raven's comically serious disposition, the man asks the bird to tell him its name. The raven's only answer is, Nevermore. The narrator reasons that the bird learned the word nevermore from an unhappy master, and that it is the only word it must know. He thinks for a moment in silence, and his mind wanders back to his lost Lenore. He thinks the air grows denser and feels the presence of angels, wondering if God is sending him a sign that he is to forget Lenore. The bird replies in the negative, suggesting that he can never be free of his memories. The narrator becomes angry, calling the raven a thing of evil and a prophet. Finally, he asks the raven whether he will be reunited with Lenore in heaven. When the raven responds with its typical nevermore, he is enraged and calls it a liar, commanding the bird to return to Plutonian shore, but it does not move. Presumably, at the time of the poem's recitation by the narrator, the raven is still sitting above his door. The narrator's final admission is that his soul is trapped beneath the raven's shadow and shall be lifted nevermore. By the end of the poem, the narrator has lost his faith, if not his mind, giving in to the sorrow of losing his love and knowing that she will return nevermore. Poe himself meant the raven to symbolize mournful, never-ending remembrance. Our narrator's sorrow for his lost love Lenore is the driving force behind his conversation with the raven. In turn, the raven, even through its limited vocabulary, forces the narrator to face the reality that Lenore will return nevermore, a fact that the narrator really does not want to acknowledge. As a result, by the poem's conclusion, the raven has the eyes of a demon, and its shadow hangs over the narrator's soul. For the poem's speaker, the raven has moved beyond mournful, never-ending remembrance to an embodiment of evil. Poe sold the poem to the American Review, which paid him a whopping $9 for it, and printed The Raven in its February 1845 issue. Following its publication, the poem appeared in periodicals and anthologies across the U.S. Within a month after The Raven came out, there were parody poems: The Owl, The Whippoorwill, The Turkey, The Gazelle, The Parrot. Abraham Lincoln was particularly fond of one parody called The Polecat. With all this notoriety, Poe became a bit of a sensation and was soon recognized by children who followed him in the street, flapping their arms. He'd turn around and say, "Nevermore," and they would run away, shrieking. Trying to capitalize off his fame, he gave lectures that included dramatic readings of the poem. His lecture was a rhapsody of the most intense brilliance. He kept us in trance for 2.5 hours, said one attendee. Yet another said that Poe would turn down the lamps and recite those wonderful lines in the most melodious of voice. Another said to hear him repeat to the Raven, which he does very quietly, is an event in one's life. Sadly, because of copyright laws at the time, publications did not have to pay Poe to reprint his poem. As a result, one of the most well-known poems ever written made its author very little money. Poe was so poor that he struggled just to feed his family, and wore his one coat buttoned up to his chin to hide his worn clothing. The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as someone gently rapping on my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this, and nothing more. Distinctly I remember it was the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow. Vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And the silken, sad, uncertain rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before, so that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance on my chamber door. Some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. It is this, and nothing more." Presently, my soul grew stronger, hesitating, then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is, I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that scarce I was sure I heard you." Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, "Lenore?" This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word, "Lenore." Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, soon again I heard a tapping, somewhat louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see, then, what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more." Open here, I flung the shutter, when, with many a flirt and flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord or lady, perched above my chamber door, perched on a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling, and my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. Though thy crest be shorn and shaven thou, I said, art sure no craven, ghastly grim and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore. Quoth the raven, Nevermore. Much I marveled, this ungainly fowl, to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. But we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door. Bird a beast upon the sculptured bust above his chamber door, with such a name as Nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on that placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, Nevermore. Startled at the stillness, broken by reply so aptly spoken, doubtless, said I, what it utters is its only stock and store, caught from some unhappy master, whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster, till its songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy bore, of nevermore. But the raven still beguiling all my fancy into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of the bird, and bust and door. There upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy onto fancy, thinking, what is this ominous bird of yore? What this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking, Nevermore. This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing, to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining, on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er, but whose velvet lining with the lamplight gloated o'er, she shall pass, nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed from an unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite, and nepenthe from the memories of Lenore. Quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget his lost love, Lenore. Quoth the raven, Nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, whether tempter sent, or whether tempest toss thee here ashore, desolate, yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me more, I implore. Quoth the raven, Nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore, tell this soul with sorrow laden, if within the distant Aidenn, It will clasp a sainted maiden whom the angels name Lenore. Clasp a rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the Raven, Nevermore. Be that word our sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked upstarting, get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart, and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the Raven, Nevermore. And the Raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor. And my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore. Thanks so much for joining us for the episode. For information about our in-person experiences and virtual events, please visit our website, which is hauntedwalk.com. Don't forget, you can use the promo code HauntedTalks to get 20% off The Haunting at Home. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all three at Haunted Walk. And if you haven't had a chance to yet, please be sure to subscribe and rate the show wherever you listen to us. It means a great deal. As always, a special thanks to our Haunted Talks team, including our awesome audio editor, Michelle Dennis, and Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.filmmusic.io for the additional music. Until we meet again, sweet dreams.